Hi, welcome to Candid Chats on Cancer. I'm Mary Robinson.
And I'm Jamie Moore. So Mary, who are we talking to today?
Well, we have Dr. Kim Bland here from Methodist Hospital. And I'm really excited to hear about what you do. You're a nurse practitioner.
I am. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm currently working in palliative medicine. And I've worked in a lot of roles since I've been a nurse. I've been in oncology, I've worked in med-surg, also worked in newborn ICU and stem cell transplant, and now in palliative care.
Wow.
So that's, well, you need all that experience to be in the palliative care actually.
Right.
So it's like everything you've done is kind of built
Absolutely.
up to this day.
That's exactly.
So tell us a little bit about palliative care.
Yeah, so palliative care, we work with patients that have serious life-limiting or life-threatening disease. And what our role is helping patients and their families with making whatever's going on better at the time. When people are in the hospital or have a serious disease, it's a stressful time. And so we help the patient by symptom management, people that have symptoms that are uncontrolled or makes their disease much worse. And then they may have fears or concerns about what's going to happen. And so we help with letting them know what's going on with their medical condition, but also what might be coming up in the future so that there's not surprises. So if they can plan ahead, then typically they have less worries. And then as patients are more comfortable, so then are their family members. So we help with symptom management, planning ahead, like medical power of attorneys, really just there as support and advocate for that patient and family for wherever they are, very individualized.
What's the difference between hospice and palliative care?
Great question, yeah. So palliative care is provided alongside curative treatment. So at any point in a disease, we can see people with serious life-threatening or limiting disease. So it might be someone who has presumed cancer, and if they're not thinking they want, to proceed with chemotherapy, some people know ahead of time, they may not want that depending on what's going on with their other conditions. Then we can help them with medical decision making or talking about what things would look like if they proceed with treatment or if they don't. It might be somebody with renal failure, talking about what dialysis looks like, and then they can make the decision if they want to proceed from there. And then sometimes, if there's not an option for treatment or cure, and then we want to focus more on comfort and quality of life, then that's hospice. So hospice is a small part of palliative care. It really focuses on the last 6 months of life and making sure that patient has respect, dignity, some control over their life, but the best quality of life for whatever time they have remaining. So palliative care is any point in a disease, and then hospice really focuses on end of life. Great question.
It sounds like it's really important to have you involved because you get so much information on what could, your life could be like this if you do palliative care versus, like chemo versus
treatment or
maybe,
not.
or not treatment. And that gives you a picture of what it might look like.
Yeah, and so we feel like the only way people can make decisions is by having accurate information. And so we're very honest, as much as people are ready to hear it. But when we're consulted, one of our focuses is really sitting down with that patient and family. We set up family meetings, and we want to hear what's going on with them in their life, what's important to them, how were they, what do they enjoy, what's important to them to make sure they can still do if possible. And then we provide that medical piece to say, here's what's really going on to make sure the patient and their family have an understanding that's accurate and realistic of what the healthcare team is saying. And our job then is to be a liaison to make sure what the patient and family want and hear and what the medical team is saying matches, and then how do we make that fit in alignment with what that patient really wants. And so we help with providing options or home resources, making sure that they're aware of if they choose a certain decision what that means, or if they choose a different role what that means. So our saying is really we hope for the best, but we want to make sure people are ready to plan just in case things don't go as hoped. Yeah,
you've got to. All of us with cancer know, understand that part.
I remember when I had to do the power of attorney forms, and I really didn't want to because to me it was a scary thing.
It is.
But at the time I had somebody help me through that, and it wasn't a bad thing at all actually, and it's good to be prepared in case. Yeah, just in case. I don't know if you've ever had to fill out that stuff, but
they tell you to go get your affairs in order. Okay, well, what are affairs in order?
Yeah, great question. So that's part of what we help with. So part of it is, the physical part and helping people with that. But emotionally and planning ahead, a lot of it is, am I ready in case something would happen? So medical power of attorney is one of the things. And really that document just says, if there's ever a time the patient can't be a part of conversation, who would we go to for making sure we know what that patient would accept, or if you're in the hospital and you can't, something goes wrong, who do we call? So we're making sure that that person's had time to talk with their loved ones about what they would want, and then they direct the healthcare team through that power of attorney. If the patient can't speak for themselves, who do we go to talk with? Because you don't want to go to someone and have it be the person who wouldn't follow that, desire. Is really something that we make sure whoever's the power of attorney is going to do what that patient would say if they could. The other part we always talk about for anybody who's in the hospital is something called code status. So, how aggressive to be with cares, and if things don't go well, what does CPR entail? What does having a breathing tube entail? A lot of times people see things on TV and it's just not accurate. So we dispel some of those
Sometimes
truths.
it scares you.
Yeah, and so we just talk about what does that look like, and I think you have to have that medical piece tie in to say, for you, here's what it means, and your chances of making it through this, and what it might look like after, because that's different for everyone. So for people that know they never want to be on a breathing machine or, tied to a machine, we don't want to do that very aggressive procedure if that's something they know they don't want already. And so if you never have the conversation, then there's a risk that, they might have more harm or something more aggressive done to them than they would ever accept. But you don't know if that discussion doesn't happen.
That's
It's
a hard
very
discussion
important.
to have.
It is.
Yeah.
We try and normalize it, because if you're in the hospital, it takes a lot sometimes to be in the hospital anymore.
Yeah.
And so just to say, it's something we just bring up for conversation for family. It's not that we think anything's going to happen now, but as situations come up, it's important for them and their families to have discussions about if you would or wouldn't want to have certain things done, because we don't know every scenario that's going to happen. But if you have patients and families talk, then it's less scary for family members if they know the decisions they might be making are what that person would say if they could.
Yeah.
It's really a gift for families if that's already been discussed.
Well, and you also kind of know a hierarchy of in the family, because the family gets together and talks, and now you have somebody who's designated as, I don't know, the captain of the support team. That makes it much easier for your team.
Right. We know we're always going to the right person then. Yeah. Because sometimes in families, people come forward, and if we don't have that document, it's hard for us to know who the right person is. But if we have that document, then we always make sure we're going to the person that the patient has deemed their representative. So we always know we're going to the right person.
Yes, I have 4 sisters. And so, when it came to the decision on my mom or coming on my father, the 4 can have completely different things.
Absolutely.
How can you help a family work through something like that, where maybe one wants to have everything done for their parent, and the other 3 are all going, no, this is what.
Yeah.
And that's probably
They
why
want
those
it.
forms are filled out. So
That's why we encourage those to be done.
Yeah.
But we do have sometimes where you're right. If there's a parent and there's no POA document and there's no spouse, then the kids are the next of kin. And ideally, all 4 would have to agree on things. So that's why that family meeting comes into play. And we really talk about what's their understanding about what's going on and what's their understanding about options, because sometimes it's just dispelling misunderstandings. To say this really isn't an option, it's not realistic that will ever happen, and making sure that they have a good understanding of really what's going on, and then talking about options that are real. You can't hope that someone who's very debilitated is going to go home and take care of themselves. So it's really, what are the realistic options, and then making sure that everybody is in the same room to have that conversation. And that is often why we get consulted, is sometimes family discord. And so we try and make sure that as much as we can, we bring that family together, because it's that family that's going to have to live with that long term. And so we want to make sure that we keep everybody as in agreement as possible. Yeah.
It sounds like very complicated to me. You must have, what kind of team approach do you have to do all of that?
Sure. Yeah, at Methodist, we have a team that has hospice and palliative care physicians on it. We have nurse practitioners and nurses, and then we pull in resources as needed based on that individual patient's needs or that family's needs. So might be ancillary services, other healthcare team members. I think the biggest resource we have is time. So
Right.
when we see patients, we might, our initial family meeting, we might spend an hour or two with them, which is unheard of really for
Right.
medical care.
Usually we get 5 or
Yeah.
10
But
minutes.
That's so nice.
Absolutely.
So nice for
Because we're
those
not
families.
rushed, and
Yes.
we're there for the patient. We sit down with them, we silence our phones, we're there for whatever they need, for how long they need. And then if they're in the hospital, we follow up with them, pretty much every day and keep an eye on them and say, how's it going? If they come back into the hospital, then they have that continuity of our team, to follow them and
Right.
say, hey, we knew you from last time, and we can just pick up from there. And so how reassuring for that patient and family to know that someone already knows them and they don't
Right.
have to repeat their same story over and over again, and then we just pick up from there. We also have an outpatient service now. We have inpatient we can see, and then also outpatient. So if it's someone that would benefit, then we can follow them as an outpatient too. So our goal with that is keep their symptoms managed and keep them out of the hospital, and we can have family meetings and make sure that things are going well outside the hospital so that hopefully they won't be in the hospital as much.
Yeah.
So it's that really continuity of care, I think, that helps. So we have a great support from, the hospital administration and all the resources that we have available, that whatever that patient and individual needs, we really want to make sure that we meet whatever needs we can to make that difficult situation better.
Right. Continuity of care to me means a lot. I just had to go back on chemo, and it was really nice to see the same nurse who
Sure.
took care of me, a year ago, was there, and she was, the first one to say, "Oh, you're back. Don't worry about it." So the continuity of care is
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing that it follows you from the hospital, and if you come back, and you can do it on outpatient too.
Absolutely, yeah. So it might be symptom management, it might be, a medication check or refills, but each time we meet with that patient, we always want to make sure, how are things going? What can we do to make your life better? Quality of life is really utmost important with palliative
Right.
care, so whatever we're doing, it always has to balance with how can we maximize their quality of life, no matter where they are. It could be emotional, it could be physical needs, maybe we have social work come in and help with resources in the home or transportation, to the cancer center.
Right.
Whatever we can do to help that patient and family feel like their needs are being met.
I know when I was at Methodist, they did such an amazing job making me feel, at home, away from home, because I was there for such long
Yeah,
periods of
yeah.
time. And I know that team effort is just, I don't even have the words for it. You guys were just amazing. And
Yeah.
Kim was actually on, the team of nurses at the time. And I know you're in a different capacity at this point, but it just really meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I think that's just reassuring. You feel safe when you know people,
Exactly.
and it just lowers your stress.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody makes you feel so welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It is taking the fear out of it.
Absolutely. Some people are afraid. No, I have to say, some people, when they hear palliative care, they're afraid because of the misperception that palliative and hospice are the same thing.
Right.
And so we're a consulting service. So in the hospital, maybe the hospital doctor or the oncologist might tell the patient, I'm going to have palliative meet with you. A lot of times people are really afraid because they assume it's hospice. And so it's really, the first step is getting over that, to say, it's not
Right.
hospice. We're here to support you wherever you are. We're going to get to know you. We want to make sure that you know what's going on, and just to bring the healthcare team and that patient family together to make that very individualized approach. And so the first step is really getting over that misperception that people are afraid of palliative care.
Right.
But, really once that happens, then they're like, oh gosh, I accept now that I know what you do and what you are.
and they probably need that.
Yeah, they
Need
didn't
that
realize they
support.
needed until, they see what we can help with. So,
Or you deny you need it.
yeah.
Because if you think, well, if I'm going to palliative care, the next step is hospice, and then the next step is step none of us want to take. So now, do you follow with the palliative care team, and now do you help them transition if they have to transition from palliative care to hospice care?
Sure, yeah. So part of what we do, a part of how, palliative care is hospice we help with that transition. And so if someone is nearing end of life, or they've decided no more treatment, or they're not a candidate for treatment,
Right.
and we think the prognosis is 6 months or less, and so that's really based off of how functional somebody is. If you're not eating or drinking much, if you're sleeping more, those sorts of things. And so then we meet with them and just, make sure they have a good understanding of where they are in the disease process. What are their fears? What are their worries? What's their family's understanding? Again, get everybody on the same page. And then when they're ready, we talk about hospice and what that looks like, where it can be done, what's provided, really just to reassure them that what do they see as a good end of life? Where do they want to be? Make sure their symptoms are well managed, to make sure. That's always a fear, is am I going to be uncomfortable? And we really want to make sure they know that their symptoms are going to be managed no matter where they are or who's with them. There's a way to manage symptoms, and that takes a lot of that fear off. But really then just help set up where they want to go, using support services, again, social work. If they need to go to a facility, we help get that lined up and talk about, which hospice agency we bring them in so they can talk with the patient and family, whatever we can do ahead of time to make sure they're comfortable with their team that's going to take care of them on hospice. And then that hospice team picks up once they're left the hospital to make sure that their needs are met. But we do stay in touch with the hospice teams. We want to know how people are doing.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So is palliative care just for those that have cancer?
Yeah, good question. So we see people with all kinds of diagnoses, as long as it's serious. So it might be somebody in the intensive care unit who's had a very acute event, but they have 10 providers on their case, and
Right.
nobody knows what one hand's saying to the other hand, because you get, a small piece. The heart doctor says this, the kidney doctor says that, the lung doctor says this, but nobody talks about what's the bigger picture. So we're often invited in to be a part of that care to bring that picture together. Instead of looking at each little number, what's it look like overall? It might be somebody with heart disease, it might be somebody with renal disease. We have dementia patients, people that have been on the ventilator for a prolonged time, and are they looking at maybe having to do a tracheostomy? Would that be something they would accept? So it's anybody that's having a serious illness or something that could shorten their life, or something we know we can't reverse, such as dementia or COPD, things like that. So it's really for anybody that meets those criteria.
It has, that are very, very sick people. Now, back to the getting your affairs in order again. Okay, what else can we do while we're in palliative care to get ready to possibly transition into hospice care?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is conversations with your family,
Right.
just to make sure where that, where the preference would be for that, and how you would want that to look, and if there's medical power of attorney or financial power of attorney, we can help with medical power of attorney. We don't with a financial, but that's a really critical piece as well,
Right.
to make sure if there's things that bank accounts or cars and things like that that you need to be addressed, and who's going to take care of that. Really getting your paperwork in order so people know where to find things, but as much as letting your family know, what you want, and if you start, say, at home, when would be a time you might want to move to a place like Hospice House or somewhere like that, or making sure your family would be comfortable if you're at home. Your family then would do the majority of the care. Are they comfortable with that? Just really making sure what it would look like, and is everybody in agreement with how that would be and where that would be. Yeah. We do have a lot of, if there's kids in the family, there's a lot of resources we can provide for kids to help ahead of time, or hospice helps with some of that planning. Once you're on hospice, they also provide about a year of bereavement for
Right.
family members after. So
Really?
That's really nice to know.
So it's not, once when someone passes that they're done, there's a
Right.
year of bereavement services for family after.
That is great. I mean,
And is this service, does your insurance pay for this, or is it free?
Yeah, so it's a consulting service, and so it would be billed just as if you saw any other specialist. And so insurance, Medicare, Medicaid will cover it, typically at whatever your specialty. So if you saw a pulmonologist or oncologist or someone like that, it's the same specialty service billing. And outpatient is the same, so it's billed as a specialty outpatient service, but insurance would cover that. Yeah. If someone doesn't have
Yeah.
insurance, then we hook social work up to help with Medicaid and those other resources too. So that's part of what we do, is identify people that have, financial issues. If they're looking at hospice at a facility, room and board is not part of that hospice benefit. So we
Right.
look at how would somebody be able to afford that, and then we have social work help with options that way too.
So now, the children, it's great that you brought that up. What, for children seeing their mom go through into palliative care, what can you recommend for the kids?
Yeah, there's a number of services in Omaha that help with that. Grief's Journey is who we use for children. They have some support groups and different things that you can actually go to their building, their office, and help kids that way. We at Methodist often use Child Life from Children's. They often come over and help if we have someone that's not doing very well and they have kids. They'll come over and help with the kids part of it. Our chaplains are great resources as well to help with resources, books, coloring books, different things to help the kids. So yeah, wherever they are, whatever age, they have different needs.
Right.
And so we want to pull those specialist people in that are aware of how to address those needs and what they need. Yeah, we do, sometimes on the inpatient side, we have some memorial things we can do with people that are passing away, maybe in the hospital, handprints, thumbprints, locks of hair, different things like that, that we
Really?
can do for families so that they have a memory of their loved one as well.
That's nice.
Tell me more about that. That is really pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So you do what you,
So there's some clay. It's like a clay that you can put somebody's thumbprint in and it
Right.
hardens. Or you can do a handprint, cutting a lock of hair and putting it in a nice little memory bag.
really?
Yeah, just some things that people can remember their loved
That's
one.
nice.
Mhm.
It's
That's
really
a-
nice.
That's a really great little service. Who would have ever thought of that? That-
Yeah, we used to do it with kids and babies as well. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's neat.
So talking about kids and babies,
Yeah, at Methodist we're an adult hospital, so
when you don't
we
have
don't.
that-
Yeah, we don't have kids and babies there. But when I was in the NICU,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I always very respected the NICU nurses. I was
Mm-hmm.
a trauma intensive care nurse,
Oh, gotcha.
and so the NICU nurses, you guys had, you think her job was hard now? Her job then was.
Oh,
like,
I'm sure.
oh
I
my
could only
God.
imagine. Yeah.
So what else can you tell us about the Methodist Esterbrook Cancer Palliative Care Team?
Yeah, so we're an inpatient service primarily, but then we do see outpatients both in a hospital clinic as well as in the cancer center clinic. And just know, the biggest thing I would want to convey is just, don't be afraid if you hear the word. We're here for
Right.
support. We're here to make sure that the patient and their family's needs are addressed, heard. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And then how can we meet those needs and make sure that medical team understands where the patient and family are coming from. Sometimes there's just a miscommunication of what the patient and family are hearing and what the healthcare team is saying, and
Right.
it's hard for people to have conversations. And so since we've been trained and we're kind of experts in communication and patience and getting everybody on the same page, often, we get the story directly from each, and then we can bridge that to make sure they're both hearing
Right.
what the other is saying, because sometimes it's hard to tell your doctor something. As you mentioned, maybe there's not as much time to have that conversation as you want, or physicians may think they're telling their patients, but it's in a way that they're not hearing it.
Right.
And so, we gently talk about it and say, here, what do you understand, and what if things don't go well, and I'm concerned because sometimes those little tricks and hints just let people know we're worried about them, but
Right.
we're on their side. And so we're really wanting to make sure that their needs are met. And so it's so important that patients aren't afraid of the word.
Yeah, because it sounds
Yeah.
like they can be on palliative care for
Absolutely.
years. I mean, it's not like
Absolutely.
it's something that.
Or you
Yeah,
can
there's
go
no
off
limit.
of palliative care.
Yeah, can
one
you
day.
go off
You can
of
actually
it?
get healthy again.
So palliative care is there as long as it's helping. If we have some people that feel that we're not, the right thing for them at the time, and so
Yeah.
we're there when people need. If they come back and forth to the hospital, we may not be consulted every time. It kind of depends what's going on. But if it's somebody, say, with a respiratory like COPD, and they keep coming in and they're getting worse each time, then we can just keep that relationship building. A lot of it's just
Right.
getting to know the patient. They get to know and trust us, and then you can start making inroads with deeper discussions. So there's really no on and off palliative care. It's there if it's helpful, and we see people as long as it's working. If they prefer not to use our service, that's okay too. But usually once we can get through to them our purpose and what we're there for, then it's understood that we're just another set of eyes and ears
Yeah.
to make sure things are going as well as can be.
Well, and I think Jamie said it earlier too, with the getting over the fear of palliative care, and that's the reason why we're doing this show, is to inform people of all the different options that there are out there, and they don't have to be scary.
No.
It'd be very helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate your having this segment, because there is a lot of misperception about palliative care and hospice, and what do they mean, and just because you're on palliative doesn't mean that you're going to progress to hospice.
Right.
Sometimes we just see people and help them with making a decision, and then that's all they need. They're just so stifled by fear, they can't see through to make a decision, and so sometimes we just help them make a decision, and then that's all they need. Yeah.
Or in the hospital, it's nice to see a familiar face every day, and it always comes in with a smile. And that means so much to us when you're laying there in the bed and you don't know which end is up.
Absolutely.
Is to have somebody that just comes in
Yeah.
and every day just says, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah, and we get to know them, we get to
Yeah.
know their family, and
Because we can talk to you about things that, well, when my physician comes through the door, it's like, "Hi, how you doing? Okay, you need anything? No? Okay, bye." Well, I want to maybe talk about that I didn't feel good when I walked, or that the girl who made chocolate chip cookies was off for a week when I was in the hospital.
Just
Yeah.
small talk,
Just,
huh?
Absolutely.
just to have somebody come in and talk to you, because, other than that, you got 24 channels on TV, and that's all you got.
Yeah.
So thank you
so much,
ever so
Dr.
much
No, thank you for
Bland.
this
doing your
opportunity.
program.
This
And
has
is there
been
any
great.
last quick words that you'd want to?
No, I appreciate this opportunity, and if
I'm
there's
sure it'll
anything
help
we
a
can
lot
do to
of
help
people.
out, let us know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back again for another Candid Chats on Cancer.
Be well. We'll see you next week.